and welcome to Story X Story, the podcast by Maya Mada that dives deep into stories across pop culture, plus gives you advice on creating your own. It's episode 197. I'm your co-host, Nigel.
I am Tazziii, content creator and co-host.
And as always, we are bringing you interesting discussions with diverse voices. And to help us out today, as we say a maybe farewell to Miyazaki, is artist and comic creator Inko. Inko, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm getting excited to join in. Mayamada again.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you joining. And you were last on the podcast with our deep dive on Suzumi. And with you was another artist and comic creator, Chie. Chie, also welcome back to the show.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me again. And I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, we need your expertise. I've got questions, and I need you both to answer them. So yeah,
Okay.
We'll get into it. So you can subscribe to Story X Story wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also send us your feedback and questions in a variety of ways. You can send us a voice message on our Spotify for Podcasters page. You can email us studio77@myamada.com, or you can launch your thoughts at us on social media. We are at myamada on Twitter for how long? Who knows? I don't know what's going on. Everyone's moving over to Blue Sky, so we might need to join them. And we're also at myamada TV on Instagram and TikTok, Life of a W Gamer on Instagram and TikTok, and Tazziii on Twitter. Again, question mark for how long? Who knows? You can also join the Studio 77 Discord to be part of the Maya community and consider becoming a Studio 77 member to support the work that we do at Maya. And there's a lot of work going on, actually, so let's get into that before we hit today's story discussions. End of season announcements. It's that time of the year. We're getting close to another season of Story X Story. They said it could never be done, but we did 6 seasons. I don't know who said it couldn't be done, but I'm sure someone did. But yeah, so we're nearing the end of it, and we got some behind the story interview episodes. We've got another deep dive to come. We've got episode 200 to come as well. And then we end the year with our special episodes. So we do our favorite stories of the year and our highlights from the season that has gone. So best bits, bloopers, just anything that can squeeze into that special episode. And then we take a recording break over January, and then we'll be back for season 7 in February 2025. And got some plans, looking at different guests, bringing on existing or previous guests, bringing in new guests, and taking the podcast in interesting places, hopefully. So yeah, stick with us. As for our manga, we are continuing to work on the Origins Against All Odds comic. So this is making good progress. So we're going through the pages. So if you are on Kickstarter, if you backed us on Kickstarter, thank you very much. So we would have shared some of the draft pages that we're going through, and then just showing you like some of the process as it comes together. It has been a delayed process, but it is a process that is progressing. A lot of P's in there, but we're making progress. So this is a story that features Tazzii's character for a hope-filled manga about pursuing your creative career goals in the face of resistance from doubters and the world around you. So that is soon to come, and you'll be able to pre-order it and purchase it when it's out. We are reworking the website. We're going to just do a completely whole different website. So in the meantime, we'll work out like an interim so people can still get like our comics, and especially the new one. So bear with us while we get that all under construction, and that'll be a new website in the new year. It'll be a ongoing process for the next few months, but yeah, we'll work out a way so people can still get the manga and everything. We have a separate website for the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign. So this is the campaign that we launched to promote inclusion and diversity in the video games industry. It's a yearly initiative, so building on the work done in the previous year and continuing that push for diversity in games culture and the industry. We start each campaign with the snapshot of 40 players and makers as a way to showcase diversity and representation where it does exist. and hopefully inspire more of it. And then we go into our schedule of events. So for this year, we have the Friends and Family Game Design Jam, which is November the 23rd. So if you're listening to the podcast right away, you've got a little bit of time, but you've still got time to drop by. If not, there's always next year. But this is and/or was a single-day event to introduce young and aspiring game developers to the concept of video game design. So we encourage people to come as a family group, as a friend group, or even if you want to come by yourself in a pair, we can put you into a group on the day. So it's all about encouraging people, especially younger attendees, to participate with family members so everyone can learn about game design. And then in December, we've got the Future Summit. So this is the year-end live stream where we recap the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign and look ahead to the next year with a bunch of people in and around games, aspiring professionals, current professionals from around the world. So we try and put a global lens on that. So that's December the 14th. And yeah, you can watch along on the My Matter Twitch as well. And then, yeah, we'll call out for next year, participation in next year's events, campaign activities. Stay tuned for that. Thank you to Rocksteady for sponsoring another year of the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign that helps us bring the vision to life, make it sustainable, and help us highlight those diverse roles and people that exist in gaming. So we appreciate their commitment and look forward to working with them and organizations like them as we continue this push for shaping a more inclusive and diverse future in games. Over on Twitch, we have our Studio 77 activities. This is our platform where we interview creative professionals from different industries like comics and video games and animation. We also play games for your amusement. So we have a few shows that we do on a regular basis. We have the Studio 77 report where Tazziii and I recap the latest Maya Matter announcements and event news. We do that live. So we record it live on Twitch so you can come and see as a fly on the wall type thing. And then an edited version will go up on YouTube soon after. We have casual conversations with comic creators. So I would have just done the November episode with Nathan Hawthorne. That was episode 30. And then we're looking forward to episode 31, which will be with Renee Rientes, who is an artist who has been on the show a few times and just met her in Malta as well. So that'll be in December. But it's usually the first Tuesday of each month, but the schedule can shift. So make sure you're following us on Twitch. But it's always at 7:30 p.m. GMT and whatever that equates to in your time zone, and then stays on VOD for 14 days after that. And then we have our games night. So towards the end of each month, we play a different game with our community. So yeah, again, follow us on Twitch to find out what game, or on socials as well to find out what game we'll be playing. And then you can see some past games night highlights on our YouTube channel. And if you're a young aspiring creative professional or you know one, you can get involved in pretty much everything that I've just said through our Showrunners Work Experience program. So that's where we have created work experience opportunities for young people aged 16 and up to be part of our team across comic production, events, and content creation. And we've had young people working on all aspects over the years, like just had a bunch working at our events at Comic-Con and other events we've done. We've had many working on like comics, and yeah, just everyone bringing their perspective and getting that experience that they'll need in their careers. So email us showrunners@mymatter.com and we will tell you more. So that is most of what we're working on in the My Matter universe. Now let's talk about some of the stories we've been enjoying this week.
This is the part of the podcast where we have a spoiler-free discussion about what everyone has been reading, watching, and playing. So we'll start with our guests. I don't know who wants to go first.
I've been reading. I'm almost finishing the really fat book, Fairy Tale by Stephen King, and then this is. I found it something really similar to what we are discussing today, Boy and the Heron, and of course not just setting, but also what it happens in the story. I don't really spoil anything. I know it's very long really fat book to consume. And then also you might feel a little bit strange that it's set in around 2020. And then, of course, 70 odd years old person writing about teenager story. So you might feel a bit awkward that, oh, maybe teenagers these days don't really talk in that way kind of thing. But still, if you think that it's set in probably 90s, 80s, and then it's quite more understandable. And it's really exciting. And of course, fairy tale says you might expect something around the fairy tale, well, fantasy type of the story. But really, you were surprised when you start reading in the beginning. And then just after the first chapter, you find you don't know where you are in. That is quite surprising turn in the very beginning. And it's really exciting to see. And yes, that's quite lots of critics say that's too long, but it doesn't really feel like it when you're reading it. And yeah, I do recommend that fairy tale is quite fun. And then, of course, it's adventurous and it's a little bit spooky as well. So yeah, if you are okay reading really, really fat book, the latest creation by Stephen King, that would be, I'm sure that would be enjoyable reading.
I feel like Stephen King's coming up a lot for me recently. That's cool.
Well, if it's my turn,
Yeah.
I was watching I was actually just started reading one book called How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And I cannot, there's not much I can talk about because I just started it. But it's kind of realistic science fiction, you know what I mean? It's not like space opera type of science fiction or fantasy. It's kind of very realistic. It might be happen in the future kind of science fiction. So I'm kind of excited to start this. And another thing I was watching was the Netflix series called Chaos. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a kind of, I like that idea. It's based on Roman and Greek mythology, but all the gods are as if they're living in this modern time. I like that kind of things, you know. So, and then it's like, it's kind of retold all that kind of mythology in modern twist, which is fun to watch. It's very dark, by the way, but I really enjoyed it. And also I'm watching TV, Netflix anime, Dan Da Dan, which I really enjoy because it's all about yokai, mystical creatures and everything, and then it's crazy, and then the music is great. So that's I've been enjoying recently.
I've had a lot of people watching the
Me too.
It is actually really quite great, especially opening sequence. I think you should watch the epic opening song sequence. It's really beautifully done. The song is great, and they animated it really nicely. There's some controversial content in it, but it's cool.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm sure there's like plenty of isekais I could update you on, but I decided to not try and figure out which ones I haven't talked about yet. So I'm gonna, for once, not list isekais. But I started watching What We Do in the Shadows, which I've seen a lot of like memes online about recently, and I was like, I need to watch this. So I'm like, I think I'm like 3 episodes in. It's everything that I expected it to be from the memes in an absolute good way. It's hilarious. It's like, yeah, just this like, it's a comedy about vampires, but if you like stuff like The Office or that kind of style show, and you like vampires, then you'll love this. It's funny. Because it's like they're doing like a documentary on these vampires, and then it's just like their daily lives. And it's just got all those like awkward pauses, and then those like interview style shots. And but it's like about these vampires that like live together and
Yeah.
it's like doing vampire stuff and yeah.
I really want to watch it. Yeah.
We just watched it in a minute, but I loved it.
I do recommend it. It's a really fun one just to watch,
Great.
and especially if you need something to, I don't know, lighten the load of life,
Mm.
which I feel like a lot of people need at the moment.
Mm.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Nigel, what about you?
Yeah, so the past couple of weeks just been out and about at different events, so I haven't had much time to get into anything new. So I'll just like rattle off like existing things I'm watching or reading. So still watching Black Clover, enjoying that, and that kind of inspirational journey of a character who's being told he can't do something and is determined to do it. Reading The Way of Kings, book by Brandon Sanderson, who I've mentioned before. I feel like the first book is a lot of world building. So like plot wise or momentum wise, there's not a lot there. I mean, there's stuff happening, but it feels like it's all like setting the plot for maybe like this is the first book and then it gets into it for the next ones. Agatha All Along, still not quite finished. I think I got like 1 or 2 episodes to go. I've just been like dipping into a lot of things. Bob's Burgers, which continues to be funny, hilarious. I think I described it as like something to do with jazz the last time I mentioned it, just the way it is, and I'm gonna reinforce that because this show is just like its own, it just moves to its own beat. And I'll even clarify that, like, because the main characters, like you've got Bob, who's just like sort of straight guy, boring, but he allows all the other characters to be wacky and zany. So like his wife Linda, and then the children Jean, Louise and Tina, they're all like different instruments, and together they just play this like offbeat but hilarious like comedy. It's really good. I forgot how good it is. And then one is relatively new, is Tokyo Revengers, that I had started watching. So that is about a kid, can't remember how old he is, Takamichi, who goes back in time to save someone he forgot about but turns out he loves. So it's interesting though. It's like it does the anime thing of like vulnerable male character as protagonist that you don't always see, and he gets beat up a lot. He's not strong. He's not strong at all, but he never gives up, and he has heart. He has heart and a soft face. Apparently, a lot of bruises turn up on that face. But yeah, so it's about him, and in at least from what I've seen so far, let's say just over halfway through season 1, like a examination of like male friendships and looking at, because he goes back in time to like the start of this some gang warfare stuff that's going on, but kind of looking at these characters and who they are and their friendships. Interesting. Yeah, is interesting show, and interesting look at that kind of, I don't know, like alpha male representation, but in a different light, if that makes sense. It's not what I was expecting. I was expecting a bit of a more straight, just like, yeah, just gang warfare thing.
Yeah, it is very interesting mixture, isn't it? It's like time leap and then like young youngsters.
Yeah.
I
But then
never expected to see that.
vulnerability, that's the
Yeah,
word.
vulnerability. Yeah,
Vulnerability.
wow, yeah.
Yeah. So it's surprising actually. It's probably one of the more surprising, like, especially anime like shows that I've watched, just because what I was expecting is not what I got, but I like what I'm getting. So yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, so, just a medley of of different things whenever I get a moment, just dipping into something. So once I get a bit more settled, try and start some new stuff. But that is what I'm watching and reading as well. Those are the stories that we have been enjoying. Now we can get to our main story discussion. Today we are going to be talking about The Boy and the Heron, a 2023 anime film written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, produced by Studio Ghibli. The film's Japanese title is a reference to Genzaburo Yoshino's 1937 How Do You Live, but it's not an adaptation. The English voice cast is a who's who and includes Luca Padovin, Robert Pattinson, Karen Fukuhara, Gemma Chan, Christian Bale, Mark Hamill, Florence Pugh, William Dafoe, Dave Bautista, and I think a few more I might have left off that list. But yeah, definitely a who's who. So spoiler alert, we are going to get into all the details of this particular story. I will do a recap for those who need a memory jog or just make sense of all the different elements that are happening. But before that, we will go and get everyone's quick takes and general impressions, starting with our guests. Chie, you can go first. What did you think about this story?
Well, first of all, I actually really enjoyed and I loved it. And then story-wise, it's quite it's difficult to explain, but it's like I like it. It looks very, very, very complicated.
Yeah.
But the point of the story is quite straightforward for me. So it's kind of really kind of wonderful mixture of a lot of different kind of mosaic of a lot of different things and everything. Literally look like mosaic with colorful things and then different episode and different characters and everything. But I like that kind of spine was there. So that's my first kind of feel about that.
I get that. Okay. Inko, do you feel the same? How did you find it?
Felt similar to what she said, but the impression is just I saw the first half, the last half, like almost completely different things I'm watching, and I was always thinking about Alice in Wonderland when I talk about this particular movie, and last half definitely I was mesmerized of what's going on there. It's like mixture of the tone, slight tone of death imagery, but at the same time something very comical happens, so it's really jump up everything, maybe lots of different things at the same time. So, and also very, very difficult to remember how the things happen on the last half after watching it. So it's very enjoyable movie, but at the same time very difficult to describe what's going on in the movie. That's what my impression.
Okay, we'll do our best in this episode. But, Tazziii, what did you make of this story?
So full disclosure, I didn't actually finish it.
Oh, right.
That's mainly just because when I planned to just being able to watch it, basically. But I definitely thought that it was quite a fun journey, quite an interesting journey, and I feel like I didn't quite understand the boy and his motives and his feelings. Mahito. It is Mahito.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I really loved the imagery and this is going to sound random, but the sound. Not the music, but the sound. There's just a lot of shots where it's just this, just the sort of ambient sound of what's happening in the shot with no background music. And there was something really beautiful about that. Yeah, and I just felt like the imagery was just mesmerizing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's we'll fill in the gaps for the next hour or so. But so I finished watching this and then I really enjoyed this, but then also I don't know why, because I could take a view of it of some things don't make sense. But it does make sense because it feels like it makes sense. And then when I thought about it a bit more, this to me is so I wonder if you haven't seen a Miyazaki film before, if you can watch and enjoy this in the same way that if you hadn't watched an MCU film, whether you can watch and enjoy Endgame, Avengers Endgame, which you could because there is a story there, but it really leans on, and by design, it leans on everything that has come previously. And I feel this story more than any really leans on that personal connection with Miyazaki and his previous works. Not narratively, because it doesn't connect in that sense, but just what it does and the way it does it. I feel that if you've seen enough Miyazaki films, okay, I know what's being done. But if you haven't, you might be like, what's going on? Or what's happening? So that's an interesting balance for me. Like I said, when I finish, I'm like, I feel like this is really good, but then I'm like, oh, but if someone else did this and this and this, it might not make sense, and we'd be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. You can't do that as a storyteller. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but yeah, I really enjoyed it, and like with possibly every Miyazaki film I've seen, just like what he's trying to say. And I was like having that discussion. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. So like I said, I'll recap and then we'll get into it. So this is a story that takes us to the Pacific War in Tokyo, where Mahito Maki loses his mother Hisako in a fire. Mahito's father, Soichi, quickly remarries his late wife's sister, Natsuko, and gets her pregnant, so wasting no time there. Mahito is distant to Natsuko, and on their estate encounters a grey heron, leading him to a tower, the last known location of Natsuko's architect grand uncle. Mahito deliberately injures himself after a school fight, and while in recovery, the heron entices him with promises of finding his mother. So Mahito later is inspired to craft a bow and arrow, and spots Natsuko disappearing into the forest tower, which he's been told he shouldn't go to. He goes after her with the elderly maid Kiriko. There he is deceived by the heron, and offended, pierces the heron's beak with his arrow, revealing a flightless creature, the birdman, living inside it. A wizard orders the birdman to guide Mahito as he descends into a new realm. There he is rescued from attacking pelicans by younger Kiriko and pyrokinetic Himi, who protects bubble light spirits, the warawara, from the pelicans, from being eaten by the pelicans. Kiriko mediates peace between Mahito and the birdman, and Mahito plugs the birdman's beak, restoring his flight before they are separated by anthropomorphic parakeets. Himi saves Mahito from the parakeets and shows him the tower doors to many worlds as he continues his search for Natsuko. Infiltrating the parakeets' kingdom, Mahito finds Natsuko in a delivery room, but she fully rejects him. But Himi saves Mahito from Natsuko before all three are taken by the parakeets. In a dream, Mahito meets the wizard, who asks Mahito to succeed him in watching over the stack of stone blocks that represent their dimension. Mahito notices that the blocks are infused with malice and refuses the offer. Waking up, Mahito is freed by the birdman. They climb the tower to go after the parakeet king, who is bringing Himi to the wizard. The wizard has collected replacement blocks free of malice for Mahito, but Mahito still refuses, acknowledging his own malice embodied by his self-inflicted scar. The parakeet king takes the blocks, but they fall and the world begins to collapse and flood. Mahito, Himi and the birdman escape, reuniting with Natsuko and young Kiriko. Learning that Himi is his birth mother, Mahito warns her of her fate, but she returns to her own time without worry. So Mahito returns with Natsuko and all the animals that have reverted to their non-anthropomorphic forms. The birdman advises Mahito to forget his experience, as the charm doll he carries transforms back into the old Kiriko. 2 years after the war, Mahito moves back to Tokyo with his father, Natsuko, and his new brother. The end. So we're talking about Hayao Miyazaki's last film, and I've put in my notes ... question mark, because in 1997 he announced plans to retire following the release of Princess Mononoke. In 2001, following the release of Spirited Away, he also did the same, and in 2013, following the release of The Wind Rises, all of which we've done on the podcast. He said that if I wanted to make another feature film, I would sound like an old man saying something foolish. So here we are in 2020, for a 2023 release with another Miyazaki film. Is he saying something foolish here? Should he have retired, or is this another Miyazaki masterpiece?
For me, it's another Miyazaki masterpiece. It's I kind of the things I really like about his film. Everything was there, to be honest. So I actually really, as I already told you this, I really enjoyed it. And also at this time, I can relate everyone in the film. Okay, it might sound very strange, but I mean, maybe apart from some birds, I can relate all the human-ish characters. So I really, it's not like foolish. I think it's I admired him in his age. He kind of, he'd done Winds Rises, that kind of film, and then he kind of not went back, but crazier version of Spirit Away, kind of, in a contents wise. The story wise, it's quite, again, I thought it was quite straightforward story, but contents, the vision, and then
like presentation.
Yeah, presentation, and then how he wove the every little things. It's kind of, I found it's really kind of challenging, and I think he did quite well, for me at least.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's not the first time. He was not the first person, like, director, artist, or even like sports person and other industries who say like, this is it, I'm retiring, and then afterwards, I mean, we just seen Mike Tyson come out of retirement for some reason. So people do it all the time, but it's just interesting to see like the stories he comes back with, and this very much feels like a last film, just what it's saying and the way it's saying it. But I just find it fascinating that I didn't actually realize it was so many times he has said he was going to retire, but he keeps coming back, and it's almost like that. I don't know if you both like feel it as like artists, and I mean, this is animation versus comics, but like even comics, that like you just have more stories to tell, and you just want to tell the stories. Like, do you appreciate that he keeps coming back?
I do.
I do.
Yeah, and I actually understand why, because sometimes when you finish big piece, you feel like, oh, I've got enough. I've done enough. I don't want to do that one more time. Then a bit later, you've got something to tell. So you need to come back to create something new. So I think it's kind of, if he's got physically strong, he's physically strong, he might create something again, I think.
Yeah.
He has to be very fit.
I can feel that.
So basically what we're saying is we don't believe this is his last film.
Well, I'm just only worrying about his, physically, if he's physically fit or
Right.
not. Artist-wise, he might come back again.
I do see how this was like a last film, just because I feel like when I was watching it, there was a lot of like just moments that were like, oh, this is from insert previous film here, like, and it felt kind of like a collection of everything that he's done,
Like one last lap.
Yeah, like here's all the best bits from from my creations. But yeah, I don't know if that actually means it, but it did feel like at least it was like a closing chapter. Don't know if the book's closed, but
that's fair. And it did, yeah, it felt very like autobiographical, and like very self-reflective, yeah, in what the characters are talking about and just how it all comes together. And what was interesting, because when I first heard about it, so I came into this, I didn't know anything about the story and I'd barely seen anything. Part of that was down to me because I knew we were going to do this sort of podcast. So I was like, just let me just take it, watch it and come with like fresh thoughts, but also partly by design because there was very little, if any, marketing for this. And I remember seeing there was like purposely they were not doing any marketing. So there were no billboards, no magazine covers, no interviews, not even a trailer until after the film was released, which I'm not mad at, because trailers give too much away. And the Studio Ghibli producer, Suzuki Toshio, explained that the minimalist approach to publicity was intended to let people go into the film with as few expectations as possible. And they said, I don't want people to watch the movie simply to confirm what they already know, which I feel is something that more studios could take heed from. So yeah, did anyone else know what, like, did have any expectations? Did you see anything?
I saw I think I might have seen, I mean, I know you said they'd done no billboards, but I think they'd done posters.
I think there was there might have been like one, because I remember the image of like the boy and then the sort of heron guy inside, but that's all. I think that was it.
Because I'm pretty sure I saw like a poster on the tube, like, like the
Yeah,
Not one of the big ones as well, just one of the small ones. And it was at like a very specific train station. I feel like it was like maybe like Tottenham Court Road, Charing, like round there. And that's kind of what I knew about it. And then the rest of it was just like people saying, "Have you seen it? Or are you going to see it? Have you seen it?" sort of thing.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you can do it if you're Miyazaki. I don't know if that would work for everyone. Yeah, and I mean, it worked because let me see. Yeah, so
$300 million.
there you go. That's what I was putting up. Yeah, so when it did come out, it has brought in. So it's pushed past a rare box office milestone and grossed 300 million globally, which is fantastic for like an animated film. But then again, you can do that if you're Miyazaki. But I feel I like that approach, and it works because we have that trust with Miyazaki that whatever he makes is more than likely going to be good. And when it did come out, like we said, it was called The Boy and the Heron. What I didn't realize is that it had a different Japanese title based on the book that inspired it, which is How Do You Live? I don't know if like Inko and Chie, were you familiar with this work, and why do you think that they changed the title? Because I'm not sure The Boy and the Heron is better.
Yeah, I thought so. Because I read the How Do You Live before watching this movie. Yeah, but How Do You Live itself has got a story in it with a small boy.
Right.
And I completely believe there was adaptation of the How Do You Live because there's no information about the film before it comes out. So it's really misleading in a way because people with no information, just a name, How Do You Live? Of course, people are going to think about the book based on, and then go to the cinema and seeing How Do You Live is just a mere maybe few minutes scene in the whole film.
Yeah.
The boy
It's
holding the
like
book.
important role, isn't it? That it had very important role.
Yeah, that's the book from his mom, and it's probably that's become his own question. How does he live in his life? Maybe that's why mom wanted to ask him, but it's quite symbolic in a way in the movie. It's
for
not
sure.
what I was expecting.
And it's quite meta. It's like you can read it later. That's actually I found it's quite interesting. And then I found that the Boy and the Heron is good title, but I thought it was like a bit giving away some characters, because I didn't know there is a heron, or is it because I think Japanese poster is you can see the bird, but if you're not sure it's heron or what is this kind of
it was very
poster.
sketchy image.
Yeah, very sketchy image of I think a person inside. It's not even that heron, right? In the Japanese poster.
We can see that's a bird, but there's a human eye in the beak.
Yeah.
Right. I think I've seen that.
It's very mysterious. What is this?
That approach is very interesting. But yeah, like I said, I'm glad they did it in terms of the minimal. I want because we talked about like different. I think specifically Studio Ghibli films where we've made some reference to Western audiences or Western producers, distributors, essentially not trusting Western audiences and changing things to varying degrees of like just badness because they feel it will sell better. I guess, The Boy and the Heron. Maybe we, like over here, we just like, what's it about? Who's it about? Don't give me that esoteric stuff. Just tell me who am I going to see? Maybe that's just what we do over here.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, because the book isn't like as known here, but also like if I knew the book and then it was like titled with the book and then it has nothing really to do with the book, I'd be so mad.
Fair enough, I guess. Because it's not an adaptation. So interesting like decision made there. So as for the story itself, so let's get into that because we have, I think Inko, you mentioned sort of the first half and the second half that feel kind of different. So it starts off with tragedy. So I think quite immediately we see Mahito, who is just immediately caught up in the tragedy of losing his mother to a fire. And before we really even know anything. He's like sent away without having apparently fully like processed everything. Like I said, his father just immediately remarries. That kind of that threw me off for a little bit, because I think when they were first introduced, or we were first introduced to Natsuko, I think I don't know if it's Mahito or someone says she looks just like her, like
It's
his
Mahito
mother.
said that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, and it was like, at first I was like, huh? And then as events unfolded, it's like, oh, did he just marry the sister? I was like, okay, fair enough. Okay,
Yeah,
like,
but that
and
kind of thing is not very common, but so common back time then, especially with big family. It's not first time for me to hear that kind of things happen. Not now,
right,
but in a
I
very
think that's all about power, isn't it?
what
Because
about
how
power?
is
Yeah,
so rich, and then father is the of course the having a factory, and
yeah,
probably he needs the family's backup.
yeah. It's a
So
powerful
probably
businessman, but who needs
the
the
backup, yeah.
backup from the big family?
For Mahito, things roll out so fast for him. It's just
yeah.
no time to feeling sorrow or losing the
And she's
mom.
already pregnant, so
Oh my god!
It's like I think I'm kind of guess that they might have a slight affair even before because it looks like Mahito's mom was suffering from some serious illness and then stayed in a hospital quite a long time. That's what I saw. So
I like it, drama. Where
yeah, they
he's
might
cheating.
plan that kind of things as well.
Yeah. And then it was like wartime as well, which I think.
A lot of hardships.
It's crazy time. Who
Very
knows?
crazy time.
Who knows who's doing who in wartime? Um, so yeah, and I think for me, what I took away from that bit is that just everything is moving fast around Mahito, who's very still, and obviously he's not processing all this, but he's very still. He doesn't say much at the beginning, and think he's like, oh, here's your new mother, here's your new life, here's your new school, and he just is all moving so fast. We see like he's having troubles at school as well. And what I like about like Studio Ghibli films is that Miyazaki doesn't necessarily reveal like these high stakes in the first part of the film. It's like just the stories unfold. Because I was doing this, I did a workshop at Thought Bubble, and because it's a short one, it's like an hour or something. So I do the Yonkoma page. So I go through that, and that 4-part story structure, which is the Kisho Tenketsu, and was great. It's actually great timing because we've got Inko and Chie here, where that is not necessarily like the Western way of the 3-act structure, where typically you introduce a conflict, like character wakes up, wants something, can't get it, that's the story. Now we're gonna set off on this journey when they need to learn something or become someone to get the thing that they said they want in the first act. Miyazaki doesn't do that, and this structure doesn't do that. It's like things just unfold. So in that first part, especially that first half, we're just on his life. We're just like looking at his life and how things aren't really going very well. Can you like explain that 4-part structure and how that differs from the Western storytelling, particularly for Miyazaki, because he seems to return to it?
But definitely, that's what we see about the Kisho Tenketsu. There's things that happened, and then next moment that story proceeds, then turning something, then ended up something. So that's how basic structure is. But you can expand each section, like making a key, the first section, into another Kisho Tenketsu. Then
Okay.
you can make a story, maybe a huge story behind it. That's a huge Kisho Tenketsu behind it. But also, if you break down to small episodes, there's another Kisho Tenketsu, like a small cosmos in there. There's another universe there. So it's just that's why hard in when creating manga or some manga artists
And
telling.
the storytelling as well, yeah. So big story contains a lot of little kishotenketsu and also big kishotenketsu as well. Otherwise, people will get bored. That's what we are kind of thinking when we are kind of creating a story.
Maybe because our weekly manga is so popular in Japan. So
Mm.
every week they produce one small episode, and which has to be really catchy, has to have some
Yeah,
story proceeded or turned or something happening. So maybe that's quite important to keep the attention, keep the interest from audience, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel I've said this before. We often see there's not an immediate conflict. I feel like I've brought up on a podcast, Tazziii. I don't know, but in terms of like as you were watching this, do you feel that lack of conflict? Does a story grab you, or are you like used to Studio Ghibli films where just things unfold at a slower pace? Like, was there a point at which this story like grabbed you? You were along for the ride, or how did you approach it in that early stage?
Studio Ghibli, especially Studio Ghibli, could get by amazing visuals, even though the story doesn't really have the huge conflict in the beginning of the movie. Because of the art is just amazing, and some of the small things were depicted so nicely, beautifully, comfortably. You don't feel like need a big conflict. That's what I felt, but especially this movie.
Yeah, I agree. Like there was a lot of like visual points of just like
Yeah.
I guess like slice of lifey.
Yeah, so
kind
we
of just
got used to this universe kind of time.
yeah, just
Yeah.
observing, which was quite nice, and the way
Mm.
that was done just had this like beautiful flow. And I also think there was a lot of like nostalgia in it, like even from the beginning, like that first scene like just really made me think of like Spirited Away when No Face is like wrecking the spa, and it's like a panic and everyone's rushing around. It's like, oh no, like that was very like reminiscent of that, and I feel like it had all these nostalgia points. Like with the fire was like there was a lot of like just scenes and things. It was like very nostalgic of other films of his.
Is that a good thing?
I think
because I feel like going back to my MCU comparison, they get criticized for like bringing this character from this film thing.
Yeah,
from
but
that.
I feel like that's because they do it like it's a whole like we had 10 years of it and then they're still going. Like there's a point where it becomes boring, but I feel like this was a nice like this is that film. And I feel like if this is your first that you're watching, you might want to go back and feel like, oh, this is really beautiful. So it has that
Iron Man. If you want to go back.
It has that connection rather than that fatigue. And I think that's the differentiating point, is that the MCU fatigue from doing it so much, like too much of anything.
Yeah.
You know, is except One Piece.
I found it's interesting. You just mentioned the slice of life, and then you know that one of the most talked topic within 4-panel manga. I mean, Kishotenketsu, the most basic Kishotenketsu manga, 4-panel manga, is slice of life.
Popular topic.
Very popular topic is slice of life. So it's not like it doesn't have to be extremely dramatic or anything. So it's kind of little kind of layers of episode and things as well. So yeah.
And I think, when I say conflict, I'm thinking typically like sort of in the West, conflicts like physical conflict or like external conflict. But there is not to say that there isn't conflict here, because like a lot of it is internal. And I feel, again, Miyazaki does a lot of that. And in anime actually just does a lot of that, like internal conflict. And I feel, again, not to say it doesn't happen in the West, but when I think of that, I think Pixar, and I know Pixar like are big fans of Studio Ghibli, and they have characters and stories that do rely on a lot of internal conflict. But your point about and I feel that internal conflict, or that even no conflict, kind of does work for slice of life, and it becomes it almost becomes more relatable because that is like life, which is, I guess, the
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
you know, you don't step out your house and immediately there's like the enemy is like there. So yeah, I feel like that makes sense, and maybe that's why we relate to like his work in a different way, because it always feels more meaningful or more
Yeah.
relatable in some way. So yeah, so we have this, you know, we've established don't go in the tower, because I think he goes to that tower and like, you know, your grand uncle, or I guess his great grand uncle, that was the last place he was seen. We don't go there. And then as you know, the story unfolds, we see that, well, I guess let's go to the title of the story, the Heron, because as he's in the estate, we see the Heron sort of drawn to him, like more and more, initially in like a subtle way, but then in a I'm now going to talk to you way, like come over here, kid, that kind of thing. And that was an interesting development, just seeing how the Heron took to him. I think is it Natsuko said that, oh, he doesn't usually come this far, or he must be greeting you, or something like that. And then we see like the Heron sort of lead him away. I think I made a note somewhere that Miyazaki has this, I was going to say obsession, I don't know, passion, some interest in flight, because like, you know, The Wind Rises is all about flight. There's a lot of obviously birds in this. Do you know where that's come from?
We just know that he's
He
really
loves
obsessed with airplanes.
trains.
Yeah.
Yeah, fighter airplanes.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
loves airplanes.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I was trying to think about why this is why heron, why a bird. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, has like something to do with gravity, like walking on the air, like or flying, or you know, almost every single his film. I think there's a scene of people walking on the air, or you know, that kind of scene as well. So I don't know. Yes, he has obsession with this. Definitely, yes.
That's weird. So yeah, so then we get this heron that just pulls him into this tower, and that's where we start to sort of cross over into like the later part of the film, and cross over into this other world. So what begins as a very grounded environment that we can understand, we step into the tower, and that draws him into this like netherworld of like I'm just gonna keep this MCU comparison going, the multiverse, basically. So because he's enticed by like, oh, I can take you to your mother, she's not really dead, and he's like, oh, I know you're lying, but I'm gonna come with you anyway. And in stories you have this idea of like, if we liken it to the hero's journey, like meeting the mentor, like the mentor figure that's gonna guide you, and in a way the Heron becomes that, even though it's an unreliable mentor and almost like a not trustworthy one, but it's still a guide through this world and through the whole of the story. So yeah, so he's a liar, but does sort of, in fact, he's a liar, but a liar who tells the truth, because he does take him to his mother. Actually, he's just untrustworthy and has like contradictory motivations. I'm never sure like what his deal is. Like, what does he want? Like, I don't know what you thought about the Heron, like initially, and then as he's revealed to be what he is.
So he seems like a messenger of the great grand uncle. I don't know why he's so loyal to great grand, or maybe he was scared of great grand uncle to have the whole right of the universe.
It is because that world he's belong, the Heron belongs, is created by the great uncle. So if you are against him, I think for great uncle, it's quite easy to get rid of them as well. That's why that the Inko captain. Sorry, I said Inko.
Parakeet.
Yeah. Captain Parakeet is also really kind of afraid of that guy. So he's a god in that little universe. So that's why.
So Heron's afraid of him.
Yeah, you are afraid of God,
Working
right?
as like a messenger or medium between the two.
Yeah. But Heron is like also like, it seems like kind of quite difficult middle-aged man kind of attitude.
Comic relief, is it?
Yeah, and who's not like saying I like you straight away. I don't hate you, kind of, you know, that kind of attitude all the time. So he's not lying, but he's lying as well.
Yeah.
That's exactly. He's not like very honest. He cannot talk in honest way.
Yeah, and Mojito knew that. He knew that from the beginning, but still followed him. So when I was putting the notes together, I found something that it said, made a note that in ancient Rome, the heron's cry was viewed as a harbinger of change.
Oh.
So that's interesting. So there's like some backstory to the idea, or like the symbolism of the heron. Maybe I just wondered why a heron. And yeah, so the heron acts like this in the film because he brings that change from like the normal world to this other worlds, and it's a real like call to action. So it's that moment where like the protagonist is presented with the challenge, or that opportunity to do something that's going to disrupt their normal life. So we see his normal life, and then we see the disruption. So whether it's like an event or a message, or in this case a character with a message, and then they go into the journey from the ordinary world to the special world, whatever that means for the story. And here, like I said, we go into these different dimensions, and that's when things start to go weird. And I guess if I have a criticism, like I said at the beginning, there's things the film does where it seems to work. I don't know, Miyazaki can just make it work, but if someone else were to do it, maybe they wouldn't do it as well, and it would be a criticism. And I wonder if there's, like Chie, you said the story's simple, and it is. It's a boy dealing with grief here, but then there's a lot happening. Is there too much happening, or too much that is not related or not seemingly related happening here? Did you feel at any point there was too much plot here?
At
or
first,
anyone?
I thought it was a bit too much, but at the same time, he is dealing with a lot of things with Mojito, yes, and maybe other people like the suddenly forgot her name, the pregnant new wife,
Natsuko.
Natsuko, and then everybody was like dealing with a lot of things. Maybe the one who is kind of simple was Mahito's father. He's like very straightforward, simple.
Yeah.
Careful
I understood
guy.
him exactly.
Yeah, he's like a very kind of had a business minded but good guy, but he's a simple. So that's why he's not involved into that tower. That's what I saw. But Mahito and then the Natsuko had something suppressed inside of them, and especially Mahito because he's young and then he lost her. I watched this film actually right after my mom passed away. And then I kind of feel with his numbness, and also he have to kind of take it a lot of like different things, and it's kind of like you are as if you were in a dream, but bad dream and reality. So it's kind of very busy but very calm at the same time kind of feel.
Yeah.
So as a kind of 2 hours long anime, it might be a bit too much element, but I kind of understand that chaotic mixture of things with certain stillness with his facial expression or his mind. So that's what I thought.
Yeah. No, sorry to hear that. I definitely feel that kind of that mix of
I kind of really kind of that kind of the two completely different busy things,
busyness
a lot
around
of
you,
chaotic,
and then
then
stillness
but
within.
at the same time my feeling is really kind of unbelievably still. So I can see that from that film. So that's what I thought.
Oh, okay. And like Tazziii, I'm going to bring up something that's come up I feel a few times this year, where I might say something or someone might say something, and then you'll be like, we don't need all that information to understand the feelings. So you know what this feels like to me. So there were certain points of this film where things are introduced and not necessarily explained, and it'll be like, but then the story just continues, and it's almost like because we do the introduction for the podcast, so I say, hey, I'm Nigel, blah blah blah, and then Tazziii goes, I'm Tazziii. It'll be like if after that someone else just goes, and I'm Bob, and and Tazzii's like, who the hell's Bob? And like, I've never heard of Bob, but we just continue because everyone else seems to know Bob, like he's been here, and that's what I felt at certain points. Just new things are introduced, like even the wizard, because I think when he's first introduced, it's when the heron has like tricked. He's shown Mojito his mum, but it's like it's water. I think that kind of just disintegrates, and then the wizard's up top and just like guide him. And I don't know who you are. I don't know what what you are, but it's just cool. So did you feel that at all, or were you with the emotion and you were able to just like follow it through?
I feel like this is one of the times where I'm like, maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't clear of the feelings. Like, I think, like, I understood like the numbness, but then like I didn't understand like the level of coldness to like his aunt mum.
His mum, yeah.
Like I understood some of it, but like the way I was like, am I missing something?
Yeah, because he didn't want nothing to do with her.
Because it was almost like hate.
Yeah.
Like rather than, and it didn't feel like the sort of like typical like, oh, you're trying to take my mother's place. It felt very distant and cold in a way.
Yeah.
And then there was just, I don't know, there was just other bits. I was like, I don't get, like, I'm not getting the emotion. And I feel like I'm someone that often gets emotion. I'm wondering if that's because some of the imagery is like, doesn't have the cultural link, and that like that might be missing. But normally I feel like emotions are like quite universal and easy to get across. But with this, I was like, I felt like I needed an interpreter, like an emotional interpreter of like, or just like a little bit more info of like what.
One thing is
Sorry, no, go ahead.
One of the cultural background might be issue that boy his age that time usually they don't speak much, especially towards new women. So it's, I don't know, but it's quite obvious that he has to accept the situation. He cannot argue back his father because I think it's also he's a very kind of clever boy, and also it's kind of Japanese family thingy. The father said so.
Right. So this is what is happening.
Yeah.
No question.
So you cannot, Dad, I don't want a new mom, or you cannot say that. You just accept. Okay. And then especially that kind of big family, so children cannot. In that time, children couldn't act as children. So maybe is kind of showing. But he's kind of also. It looks like he gave up a little bit when he lost her mom. So that's what I thought.
Also quite intimidating, the first scene, encountering new mom.
Yeah.
And she took his hand to touch her tummy, see this baby coming, and then I know it should be something celebrated, but I'm sure
That is actually, I really surprised what she's doing, leave him alone, I thought that's
probably he would be overwhelmed, I guess.
Yeah.
Wait, you were surprised that she took his hand and had him touch her stomach?
Yeah. Because it's not
we do that all the time in West.
Do we? I don't know. That time, usually they don't, especially for the person who, even though they're gonna be her children, her child, it's kind of more it should be more formal. But she's kind of trying to be friendly. I can see that. But I was like, whoa, hey, Natsuko, leave him alone. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's because I definitely I feel you on that, Tazziii, where there's just moments where it's like just making the leap to that full emotional connection. But then I feel like it came together in the end, and I'd be interested to know when you finish it and like what you think, and if it changes any of the context of. If it changes the context of anything that happened before. But I definitely feel there were moments, like I said, it was just like, okay, new character, new time and space, okay, we're going with it. And it's very much, the phrase that came to mind is non sequitur. And I remember, because I've got Making Comics by Scott McCloud, and I remember in one of the books, he goes through like different types of stories, and one of them is non sequitur. And I feel like I never delved into that. But it comes up, and it came up in this, where it's just like essentially things that aren't connected. So there's not like a linear, logical progression, and I got a lot of that in this, especially as once we go into the tower and the Heron's told like guide Mahito, then it just goes into like, as Inko said, the second half, and it's just these different worlds. So that's where we meet the young Kiriko and Himi and the Wara Wara, just these like super cute
It's so
things.
adorable.
But then they get eaten by by pelicans, which is quite dark. And it was just jumping from worlds to world, and quite different worlds. And it's like, like I said, there's like, there's new space. We don't quite know what it is, but they're in it and they're progressing. Okay, cool. We're with it. And then Himi kind of brings some sort of anchor where she explains like, okay, there's different doors to different worlds. Here's your world. So that part helped. That helped like ground in what this is, and there's some backstory about the tower and everything. So that part definitely helped ground me in what is happening, and then it allowed me to kind of relax a little bit. So I was like, okay, cool. That's the structure. This thing came down from somewhere. It's magical. It gives access to different worlds. Okay, cool. All right, I got it. I don't know. How did you feel when you saw the different worlds, and was anyone lost at any point, or did that bit where Himi did it go through the explanation just help ground you as well?
Because the place took off by going down from the floor to the somewhere very, well, looks quite sad on the seaside. This big stone. So everything looks a bit like hinting the shadow of the death, and so it's a bit like kind of beautiful, but at the same time it's quite grim. And it started kick off really quiet and sad, and of course there's the death written on the gate of the stone. So that's everything kicked off quiet. Lots of the hinting of death. So that's we feel like, did we come in a place which is doomed to be horrible, or doomed to be sad, or is that somewhere close to where your mom is? There's quite sadness at the beginning. Yeah, but that's the word itself impression is really desolate at the beginning. That's first impression. But yeah, I think that the whole thing started knowing more about this world. It's not about just really sad and death and grim, but there are some cheerful characters coming out. Whatever's there, and maybe one of them, maybe Mahito's younger brother or younger sister will be. And there's some kind of hopes still there. And it's kind of really, lots of, we can do is assuming something.
Yeah.
It's really hard to understand what it is. So really helps if that's things about what the stone's about.
Yeah.
What the door is for. Yeah.
I watched it from the beginning. I watched it. Those fantasy, the new Heron inside of the tower I watched it as a metaphor of their inner conflict. So it's not like you cannot explain anything. You cannot understand what's happening to you. That is kind of showing that in that way, Miyazaki's way. So it's not like I was not trying to understand anything, but I just follow the feel, and then that's. So I didn't actually get really confused while I was watching this. And then, as Inko said, it's a lot of hinting of death, and then scared feeling, and loneliness, and also something the feeling about kind of mesmerized and then confused by something unexpected, something you don't understand, that kind of all the confusions and everything, and sometimes suddenly something makes sense. And so I didn't confuse when I was that. And then for me it's quite naturally. I don't know, I just love Miyazaki's work, especially this one. I really kind of love how because if you're a storyteller and if you just making things saying, well, don't try to understand my work, just read it, that is actually it's kind of less kind of, you should have slightly more responsibility for me to make stories. but somehow Miyazaki kind of he didn't
Makes it
say
work.
that, but yeah, he made it works with the visual, and then I think he's calculated it really tightly, to be honest. But you don't need to understand everything. Is what the thing I was watching, that kind of, especially that inside with the tower scenes.
Yeah, because you feel it, and I feel that I think that part of the idea of that sort of non sequitur thing is, so it's not about like the moment to moment exactly what happens. Understand it's about the overall emotion and the theme as well. So that's definitely what it's going for. And it, when I was watching it, it gave me, I mean, I think Tazziii, you mentioned Spirited Away, definitely got that vibes. But I actually started thinking of Satoshi Kon, and this was like the closest Miyazaki maybe gets to that Satoshi Kon level of like, this is just, I'm just gonna go with this. And especially with some of the characters, because particularly I think the parakeets, oh actually, so because it goes from like cute to just weird to actually quite menacing. So we see the Wara Wara, they're cute, but then they get eaten by these pelicans, and then Himi comes in, saves them, puts some stuff on fire, and then I think Mahito meets one of the pelicans, and they're kind of like dying, and it's a bit grotesque, and they explain like they've got no choice because they've been put in this world and they have to eat, so they gotta eat, and it dies, and he buries it, which is quite a sort of meaningful moment.
Yeah, and that's quite realistic. We are like that, aren't we?
Yeah.
We are not like all goody nice people. We have a like out of different side, dark side, and then twisted side as well. So that's why I kind of that's why I said in the beginning I can relate them.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then we see the parakeet soldiers, which I found so funny, but then almost like I don't know if if anyone would watch the old Looney Tunes cartoon where I can't remember an exact moment, but I'm sure this happened multiple times where like Bugs Bunny will be captured, and then some character thinks they're gonna eat bugs, and they'll get like
Oh.
the steak knife and and they'll be just like licking their lips. That's what I got from them. But then it's also quite dark because they are actually trying to eat people, and they captured them.
I couldn't help laughing though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Inko's name, Inko means parakeet, and she's using the
Oh,
parakeet as her
it's an icon, right?
icon. So when I was watching
Oh, these are
it,
your
I was
people.
like almost scream.
Yeah.
Inko's here.
Many of them.
Yeah,
Many
a
of
lot
them.
of Inko's in the film. No.
And of course in Japanese it's called the Inko Shogun. And that's the parakeet king. And then
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tazzy, I don't know if did you see that, get to that part of the parakeets?
Yeah, so I did actually get like really close to the end. Like I'm like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
okay.
So yeah, I got to the bit where like the parakeet king like slashes the blocks and
Oh,
everything starts to fall down. Yeah, the parakeets are like funny but menacing and
Yeah.
weird and like a little uncanny because they were like kind of cute but like menacing. I don't know. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, so we're jumping through these different worlds, seeing these different characters, and I think, like Chie said, it is about the feeling. And there was something I was reminded of in a Reddit thread of places, but someone you Reddit users, we do on Reddit made a good point. It said like Miyazaki's films are not about saving the world, but about saving oneself.
Oh.
And as we see like Mahito moves through this, it is him dealing with that grief that at the beginning he doesn't get the chance to really, and seeing that progress in him. But then it is very much a feeling film, and I think like Chie, you say, it's not necessarily about does this point A to point B make sense. It's just what is the feeling, and that's hard. I guess that's, yeah, maybe it's like more of like me as a storyteller, and maybe it's like the engineering thing. I'm just looking for the logical thing. So at least on first instance, it's sometimes hard for me to grasp the okay, this is not necessarily, this collection of things doesn't all make sense in a logical sense, but in a thematic sense, very much so. I can see how it all ties together. And then when we do get to the end is where some of the themes do start to tie together. So again, the magical blocks is like another concept that it wasn't necessarily introduced. There's context, there's no context to it. It just is, and that's what is representing, you know, this stewardship of the universe by his great uncle. So, and I feel this is I think the whole thing is, like I say, very autobiographical. But this one so much like self-reflecting on someone who feels like he's retiring for real. But when the great uncle is like, okay, you take this. I'm done. You take this. You continue it on. And Mahito's like, no, because it's like the whole malice thing, which is quite I mean, what is he, 12 in this? That's quite a astute observation for a young boy to make. But I thought that was interesting. And then we get the Parakeet King. I feel representing maybe of all things, maybe humans more than anything. And then it feels to me like Miyazaki saying, I'm done with my bit, passes on to the next generation, and then acknowledging the suffering. Because there's that moment where which character was it? There was a character like who also had a scar.
Oh yes, Kiriko.
That was it, yes. And is that moment, and I feel like it was almost like a small moment at the beginning when he knocked himself with the. Actually, it wasn't a small moment; it's a major moment, but small in terms of it was very personal, because at the moment he gives himself the scar that he knocks his head with the rock, it's very much a kid who doesn't want to go back to school and he just wants a way out. But then it becomes something a bit more universal, like universal stakes of it's some kind of ingrained malice. This is a bit, maybe I didn't quite fully catch on to what was being said there, but is like some kind of inherent malice in humanity, and that's why he couldn't accept blocks, I guess. I don't know what you all made of how it all came together in the end.
In the end, Mahito shouldn't be trapped inside the tower. So that's kind of, he made a decision to leave, either staying there to become a new god of that world, or going and get back to the reality. And then I don't know if you've heard of it, but I've heard the great uncle was based on Inko Heaven. What was his name?
Isao Takahata.
Isao Takahata.
Another Studio Ghibli director who deceased.
Deceased. And then the Heron was based on Toshio Suzuki, the producer.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And Mahito might be Miyazaki. That's why I was like, he might create a new one, because he was like, okay, I was break free from the kind of not old, but and then going to the real world. And so producer actually kind of, because I've heard that Miyazaki was like really kind of obsessed with Takahata's work. So he was devastated when Takahata passed away. And he was like really kind of trapped into Takahata's shadow. Like Miyazaki thought he couldn't get over, and he couldn't be better than Takahata and everything. So if you see it that way, it looks like Miyazaki finally decided to get away from the shadow of Takahata and go into the reality, forget about all the things, and then go out from that tower with producer.
And also the documentary NHK Japanese TV program showed the making of Boy and Heron. And then all through the documentary, the camera was in the studio. What Hayao Miyazaki was saying, he's always mumbling about, like as if talking to the Takahata's shadow. And then he was saying great grand uncle is Takahata, but even the film already started making, still he's not sure about his design, the uncle's design, because he knows that's a Takahata, but he doesn't know how to visualize the shadow of Takahata. So he seemed really suffering how to depict this haunting Takahata character. And then well, during his drawing, he lost his one of his erasers, and then he stood up trying to search for erasers. But what he was saying, Kim-san is Takahata's nickname. Kim-san, you hit my eraser. Where's the eraser? Oh, stop kidding me! And it's really obviously Hayao is haunted by Takahata all the time, all through the creation of this movie. I reckoned this movie is something very, very personal about Hayao Miyazaki, about what he's doing on his life, how do you live on his life after Takahata's passed away. And
Yeah.
then like a fun big tower is like what Takahata left. And then
Well, it's actually symbolized Studio Ghibli.
can be Studio Ghibli itself.
Oh wow, I did not think of that.
Yeah. So we face it
Meaning
ending
that.
like that, leaving the tower. So that I understood, like Tazziii said, it's like really end chapter of the story.
Yeah.
Because he leaves the universe, and it's
Yeah.
not his universe anymore. Then not Takahata's universe anymore.
Not Takahata's universe. But he has to kind of start doing something again without Takahata. So I think it's kind of positive as well.
Oh boy, that's like I got a whole different now perspective on. I need to watch this again. What was I even talking about the right film? I feel like I think I said is like invalid now. That's really interesting. It's very personal, very personal. And you know what else is interesting is like so visually because it looks like a Miyazaki Ghibli film, but it also looks new. I did note that. I don't know if anyone else was struck by that. Did in terms of like the visual style, if you appreciated that it does look like familiar, but maybe, and I don't necessarily say this in a bad way, but maybe still old. It doesn't look so out of place with his previous work versus something like we talked about Makoto Shinkai, a couple of his films on the podcast, and that looks like new. That's like 3D, like very sort of stylish and impressive, like visually. Not that like the Studio Ghibli and this isn't impressive, but you can see one is very much latest and one is still with that older style. I don't know how you all felt about the visual style in
Natsuko's depiction, it's so elegant,
yeah.
which I didn't feel other Studio Ghibli movie, because a lot of Studio Ghibli movie that's quite active girls are there, and of course there are some, well, of course adults, ladies in there, but especially in Natsuko's depiction, I don't know, some was very sensual, and at the same time something dark behind it, especially when we see Natsuko again in delivery room. She seems so haunting, and then still sensual, still some class in her. But I'm sure a lot of people felt scared of looking at her.
Yeah,
girl
that character design is quite unique. And I find it's really interesting that they mixed with 3D parts and totally handwritten. I mean, this one I even feel like he really wanted to make it hand drawn, the characters and backgrounds. But there is one thing which looks very kind of 3D, that stone which in the air.
Oh, in the delivery room.
No, not in the delivery room, but with great uncle.
Oh, okay.
That huge stone in the air. So I kind of, there might be a meaning or why he choose that way, but.
I mean, I think there was a lot of meaning in like the character designs, and because you mentioned Natsuko, but then because you compare Natsuko with like the elderly
nannies, the
maids, that's the word.
Maids, yeah.
So that like the elderly maids, because they were very much not sensual and just different proportions.
Yeah, almost look like a yokai mythical creatures, right?
Like different creatures.
Yeah. But I think it's intention when they are kind of got together and moving around, talking about the luggage and everything. I think Miyazaki put some kind of the fear of the like big insect or even like rats got together and moved around things. So yeah, that's kind of all really calculated in a way, the mixture of different character design, and then how they draw actually technical way, very hand drawn, very Ghibli kind of background with that kind of menace kind of object with 3D animation feel.
Yeah, at the beginning, in the fire scene, during the fire instant,
Mm.
everything's so distorted. Like when Mahito was running through the hospital, things are
Felt like
so
a dream.
Yes,
Yeah,
dream.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like a hallucination. Everything doesn't really have a proper figure. Everything's a bit distorted and really nightmarish.
It's
atmosphere.
make you really uncomfortable
Very
and
uncomfortable.
feel
Yeah.
the heat.
What did you think, Tazzy, is like in terms of like the visuals or like character design specifically?
Yeah, I feel like with the character design, like everyone, or not everyone, but there were definitely like specific like groupings of character design. Because I feel like Mahito and these like younger version of his mother were like very similar, where similar but also opposite. Because she was like the
Like Kimi was like the
fire,
traditional
literally
Ghibli-
fiery. Like
Elemental, yeah.
alive version, and he was like the like lost spark version, and you see him like
Right.
sort of gain that and get closer to more of her design. And then obviously you've got the maids, the grannies that are like, yeah, it kind of reminded me of the little creatures from Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Because they move
That's
together.
true, yeah.
right?
Yeah, and they're kind of like needy, like the soot monsters as well. Like, I've got this thing, like, let me help you so I can get something like that kind of thing.
Give me cigarettes.
Yeah. And then like his I think his father was quite an interesting character design, because I felt like he was so different from everyone else.
Yeah, he felt like I mean, he wasn't listening to anyone. He was like in his own.
Yeah, but he also just felt like very normal. But yeah, and he was like very normal. But then when he didn't hesitate, like with his son going missing and his new wife going missing, he's like, I'm going. He like grabs everything.
Yeah, we out there. Yeah, we.
And he's like, I don't care about this nonsense. But he like sees it, but he's also like, it's still nonsense. Like, and then the shocker is like, my son's turned into a parakeet. He's almost like, oh, maybe some of this is truth. And he's like, and he kind of gets a bit hysteric because he's been like very level-headed and very like protector of the family, provider before then. And then suddenly it's like, oh my God, I can't, like, what is this? He's like, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. And then it's like, what's going on? Yeah. So I think he was very interested. And even like the point where when Mahito comes back with like the cut on his head and he's like, who's done this? No, I will get to the bottom of it. He's like, no, I fell. No, I'm gonna get it. Don't worry, you don't have to go back to school. I've sorted it. And even like, I've got like on his first day, it's like, we're going in the whatever car it was. Everyone's gonna be so impressed. And he was almost like
American.
yeah, and he was quite sweet in a way.
Yeah.
Like just this doting father, like just with lots of love to share. Like even the way he treated his workers and the grannies, like he brought all the goodies back.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I wasn't sure what to make of him. He's a bit pompous is the first word that came to my mind. But then there was those hearts underneath as things start to unfold. So
yeah, he did come across a little pompous at points, but it was it felt like it was from a good place.
Yeah.
Like it was from a want for the best for his family, rather than I want to show off. It was like, I want them to have the best and to experience the best. So I thought it was quite interesting because he was so different from everyone else who had like these really dark sides and sort of more like, he was simpler. He was like straightforward, and you knew his character.
And realized that he's got same voice as Hao from Howl's Moving Castle. Christian Bale and Takuya Kimura both played
Oh, that's
how,
a good point. Yeah.
and now
Mm,
now playing the father, or I
yeah.
wonder if there any meaning
Aged
to
up.
it.
Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
like a cameo role for
Yeah,
the,
it's kind
yeah.
of
Yeah. That is true. And I mean, we're talking about the characters. I know we've spoken about. I don't know if there's any in particular that stood out. I found that as we're talking, I'm just thinking about the Parakeet King, and I just feel I don't know, that just feels like humanity. Just especially at the end where because the blocks and his first instinct was just like just smash and it just ruined everything. That I don't know. That just felt like very very now. Just very human.
yeah. I
Yeah,
wanted to scream when he smashed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, but
I
that's
I
was
can't figure this
screaming when
out.
he
Smash
was.
it. Destroy it.
I was screaming when he was trying to build it. I'm like, it's not yours to build. Like, you're not the one to build this.
the interesting things I've read is that Parakeet Kings and the Parakeet are kind of non-Ghibli fans, which they
Oh,
kind of thrash and say something they want to say, and then that's what I've heard. So that's why it's kind of, I mean, not
That's
Ghibli
interesting.
fan in general, but bad fandom,
Bad. Yeah.
bad and aggressive fandom of, but they're sweet, but they're really, really kind of cruel
Just too
at the
much.
same time. They are
That's
loyal,
interesting.
but they will actually sometimes, without knowing, they might be destroying something they like.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Oh wow.
That's I've read somewhere else. Not my opinion. I've read it.
Okay, because he came across as like this is all we know. this
Mm.
this is the only way I know to react to things is violence, and that's it. And yeah, and in that doing that, sort of like destroyed the thing that. They're like, that's interesting. That might be right.
Mm.
And I heard Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli headhunt one particular the animator from Gainax, which the
Oh
production
yeah,
creates the Evangelion series
was that for this?
for this, yes. And then
Oh okay.
they really wanted to get him to create this particular movie. So the character's movement may be slightly different from other Ghibli
Oh, I
movies
see.
because him joining and then working as a leader animator in a Studio Ghibli, and then so Hayao Miyazaki, and then of course that's all top Studio Ghibli people are going to watch the first 5 minutes of the movie to see that if they're okay, because Hayao Miyazaki is physically not capable of doing whole animation by himself. So he gave the role to this new animator. And after he watched it, he didn't say anything. He just nodded and then walked off. As he walked off from the theater room, he was talking about the film just a little bit. Okay, and then that's it. And then there's a producer next to him trying to say something, but because there's a camera crew there, but Hayao Miyazaki stopped him and then told him, please don't say anything, because I'm not saying anything. You're not saying anything either. Then that's it. Of course, there are something he wants to say about, oh, this is not quite right, or this is not what we do. But because they want to use a new animator to bring a new thing to the film, they seem like a surprise what they want to say. So let him to do, to lead the other animators. So that's really interesting moment. So I was wondering what Hayao Miyazaki wanted to say that moment.
Mm.
Did he like it or did he hate it? Or I have no idea.
Interesting, but he recognized that if we're gonna get new people, we've got to let them
That's right.
do
Yeah,
their thing.
Yeah.
he shouldn't
Right.
say anything.
Huh. That's quite. There was a bit of trivia I found about. So, like comparing Miyazaki in his younger age, where he produced 10 minutes of animation every month, but now his speed
Mm.
was reduced to 1 minute per month. So, yeah, just interesting to see how like you say, you physically can't go at the same speed and needing that additional help to
Mm.
make things. But then, yeah, it definitely looks different. The character designs, like Tazziii mentioned, that's a interesting observation about like the groupings of it. I get that. Yeah. All right. We've spoken about, I think, like some of the themes already, but just to sort of recap that, because it is like we said, it does feel very personal and autobiographical. So we have Mihito mirrors Miyazaki's childhood. So Miyazaki's father was employed by a company involved in the manufacturing of fighter plane components. So I guess that's partly where that obsession comes from. And the hospital fire at the beginning of the film evokes personal parallels with Miyazaki's loss of his mother. So yeah, it just very much feels like a sort of pouring into this story. And then some of the more like universal themes about accepting suffering, because even as we talk about it, that him hitting himself in the head, that's actually more meaningful than when I was first watching it. And we see Mahito offered that the untainted stones build his own world, but he declines because he too is tainted, and that's when he points to the act that he sort of damaged himself. But then it's like overcoming personal challenges. So we're seeing Mahito like grapple with inner conflicts and insecurities, and just it makes you think about how like we as individuals manage like to navigate and come to terms with that like loss essentially, because that's how the film starts. But then there's one I wrote down which I'm now not sure because of how you've contextualized like the dynamic between the wizard and Mahito in terms of like the younger like Mahito being Miyazaki rather than what I was thinking, like the wizard. But then I did have this note about faith in future generations, which I just feels like a underlying message in Studio Ghibli, because it's usually like young protagonists doing things, and it's about, or I took it as that message of like children being able to create that, in this case, that world without conflict, and like the old passing down to carry it on. That's how I saw it. But I don't know if anyone else, saw it differently, maybe.
No, I'm with you. It's the message I read from the film is whatever happened, you have to carry on. You know, you not have to, you need to carry on if you are living your life. And then it's positive and very, in a way, quite realistic. So that's, I really kind of like it. I mean, when I was doing my fine art practice, I always created kind of my work to say that, you know, you just carry on. Sometimes you have to give up, and give up is not a bad thing. You just need to do something to one step, you know, ahead. So I kind of, he's always doing, especially this one, kind of showing really kind of fantasic, cute, cruel, scary way to show what I wanted to say all the time. And then also, as I said, you know, I watched this for the first time when I just lost my mom, and then it's kind of really personal for me as well. To, well, whatever happened, you carry on and look forward and open the door and get back to what you need to do. So it's actually, again, it's quite positive and nice message I read from the film.
Yeah, agree. That's really, that's so when you finish watching, something you feel like more, like cheering up, lifting up feeling afterwards. Something really positive left after watching the movie, even though it's something beyond my imagination, a weird thing happened there. Not sure what I mean, but ending is quite uplifting.
Yeah, I felt like, I was like, I feel good, but I'm not exactly sure why. but,
I
but
can't make
yeah,
it in a word, but yeah, something uplifting there. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And then before we wrap, then was there any moment, any scene that we haven't spoken about that left an impression on you?
It's really obvious, but I really like the what Him said to Mahito when they finally depart to different doors, which is extremely encouraging. I have to like it's just summarize what I was thinking. I just told you, like, you go there, do whatever you need to do. So Himi is going that door. She might know she's going to die, but she's going to give a birth to this brilliant little boy. So whatever happens, you go there and do whatever you do. It's like I cried every time. At that point, I cried every time.
Yeah, it brought me tears when she said, "Oh, it's
Yeah.
brilliant to have you as my son." And then,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, that I think maybe one of the kind of best thing you will be told by your parents or whoever, I'm happy you are the good person and I'm happy to know you kind of situation. And in this case, especially from his lost mom, it's complicated, but that is like the lap up all the positive thing from those crazy crazy things happen in the past.
Okay. Anyone else?
There's one scene where Hime comes through the fire. I think it's after she like scares off the parakeets when Mahito first goes into the house with them. They're like about to eat him.
They're ready for sharpen those tools.
She comes through the fire, and then that really just, it's just like a beautiful moment. But because for me, it reminds me of Howl's Moving Castle. Like visually, it looked like Howl's Moving Castle, but it was kind of like reversed roles.
Mm-mm.
And just that imagery, that was like something strong and nostalgic. Because I love Howl's Moving Castle, and Calcifer, and Calcifer's my favorite character, and just how him and Hal are together. And I feel like that imagery was kind of like them together.
I just must say that the parakeet soldiers and parakeet king is so adorable. Just couldn't forget about thinking. Yeah, couldn't stop thinking about them. Just their figurines also so adorable. I might buy some. Really,
Nobody
that's
can
every time.
relate
Yeah.
them.
Sorry?
Nobody can relate them more than you, actually.
Probably,
Yeah,
I'm the
that's your-
only person related to them.
That's for you.
God. Yeah, I was laughing so hard in the cinema.
Great scene. I did like I think something that left an impact on me is so when the pelicans are eating the wara and then Hime like is just lighting everything up. I'm like, yeah, burn them because they're eating these cute things. You get them. And then when Mahito has the conversation, and it's quite revealing. I guess it's like the other perspective is like, yeah, we're doing this bad thing, but we have no choice. And it just
survive.
like reminded me. Yeah, it just reminded me that sometimes you don't know why people are doing something. First glance, it's like, oh, these are terrible, pelicans are the worst. But it's like they don't have a choice, and because they've been brought into this world by someone else, and so I feel there's something very sort of relevant in that, in how you perceive someone.
Yeah.
Without
who
full
has
context.
no choice. Yeah.
Yeah, so that definitely.
And right
Even
after,
the host voice as well.
yeah, and then at the same scenes, when Hime trying to burn the pelican down, Hime also burned some of the wara wara as well.
Yeah, she did.
And then the Mahito tried to stop her, but if it's kind of another thing from different perspective, to save someone, you might need to sacrifice something. It's kind of really kind of complicated things going on.
No, and that's why I like just Miyazaki. It's just like it's not binary. There's a good and bad. It's always like blurred lines, and
that I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really liked it. I feel I'm gonna have to watch it again, and I'll get a completely different take on it already. But it's just impressive how he puts together stories. Yeah, there's no other notes. Well, I've got lots of other notes, but I need to watch it again. So, but that is our discussion on Boy and Heron. Maybe the last film for Miyazaki. Who knows from this point, but potentially. Very likely, almost certainly. So before, actually, no, let me do that again. So yeah, let us know what you think about this episode's story discussion and what you got from the film as well. So before we wrap up completely, let's get into this week's storytelling tip. Each time we do a deep dive on the podcast, I like to pull out a storytelling tip for others to consider when making their stories. So this is a consideration from someone who also creates stories and likes to learn from the techniques or mistakes of others. And for today's episode, I wanted to go back and discuss that non sequitur storytelling structure thing, because that just got me thinking, especially with the story that I'm doing at the moment. So for those that don't know, that non sequitur narrative is different from like conventional story progression. So the term actually comes from the Latin phrase meaning it does not follow. Unlike most Western narrative frameworks like 3-act structure or the hero's journey, non sequitur storytelling disrupts that linearity and logic and brings together different, like loosely connected events or emotions. So it's all about emphasizing mood and theme and character rather than necessarily a rigid sequence of like this happens and that happens and then that happens. And so there's a reason why creators like Hayao Miyazaki choose this approach. Usually in storytelling you get like a structured arc, beginning, middle, and end where things are resolved. And then we rely on this, at least in the West and specifically for me, rely on that logic to like navigate the narrative. But the idea for non sequitur is that it's inviting you to experience like disjointed moments that might lack immediate connection, but then add to the overall atmosphere. So other films from Miyazaki like My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away are really good examples of this. So in Totoro, there's no overarching conflict or resolution, and instead it's about moving through these small magical moments that are mixed in with like daily struggles of the characters. So rather than being a sequence of events towards like a climactic resolution, it's just about exploring a world seen through the eyes of these two sisters. So in this film, we see Mahito and a cast of characters that we may or may not have been introduced to before move through like different worlds that don't seem to connect. So we often get no introduction to the characters, the worlds, but we see the threads come together in an overall mood that like intrigues and invites like thought and discussion, as we've just proved. And I mentioned earlier Satoshi Kon as an example that came to my mind when thinking of like similar feeling of like non sequitur storytelling, and specifically Paprika, which is an anime that like very well blends reality and dreams in like these fragmented narratives. So just like there's an overwhelming sense of like chaos and wonder. And although this is not quite like that, I did not know where I was with that one, but similar thing. If you're British and especially of a certain age, Monty Python's Flying Circus is another good example of like non sequitur storytelling. So it's like a sketch show that just where scenes end abruptly, transitions without explanation, but it's all about delivering like that punchline driven humor and absurdity, and it's very British. If you haven't seen it, it's like very British. Something more modern is like Rick and Morty. So a lot of episodes use that non-linear, very disjointed storytelling. Characters like always jumping between different realities, breaking the fourth wall, but it's all about using those random moments to emphasize like the absurdity of that story. So like you might be thinking, why would you use that kind of storytelling? You might want to engage the audience's imagination. So as we may have just shown through that discussion, you leave certain things unexplained and you encourage audiences to find their own meaning. You might want to convey complex themes. So it's particularly suited to exploring those abstract or philosophical themes in the story. Or as Miyazaki seems to have done, is like invoke those real life experiences. So either literally or just that feeling of like, life just feels like fragmented and episodic, really. So maybe non sequitur is actually the most real life version of that. And it's actually something I hadn't really considered until actually doing the current Mayamada story, Origins Against All Odds, which I realized watching this and putting the notes together is quite non sequitur, because it's not a linear story necessarily, and it's more about the overall mood than an exact like cause and effect through a traditional narrative. So here are some things to consider when implementing a non sequitur story structure in your narrative. So number one is you want to ground the story in a cohesive theme. So themes always come up. It's a thing of mine, and for a reason, especially here. So if the plot is just going to go in different places that aren't always explained, you want to have a strong theme that helps pull everything together and helps the audience stay engaged because they understand what it is all going to. And so again, we mentioned Spirited Away. There's a surreal world in that, but it's all about exploring identity and resilience in that story. So we get what it's all adding to. Number 2 is using the mood and atmosphere to anchor the audience. And again, if you're going to go the non sequitur route, then you really want to add to that emotion. And I feel like here with The Boy and the Heron, there's definitely that strong emotion that comes through. And that's something I had to think about with Against All Odds, about where I'm sort of weaving together different moments of like highs and lows in a seemingly like disconnected narrative, but overall the emotion hopefully it comes through. I mean, people read it and let me know either way. Number 3 is establishing meaningful character perspectives. So the audience can tolerate certain things if other things are done. So if there's ambiguity in the plot, we can connect it to a character, and we get that with Mojito. So like he's driving us like forward. We've seen him from the beginning. We're tied to that tragedy, and we understand, well, at least in some space, we understand we're seeing it through his perspective. So that grounds us in a certain way. And then number 4 is allowing for like audience interpretation. And I feel like this story, but just Miyazaki's stories in general, just like leave that room for the audience to find their own meaning. And I feel that's a great thing to be able to do. And hoping that with the story that we've got coming out, that is done in some way as well. So yeah, it's not about the traditional narrative logic, but about the mood, the theme, and exploring character perspective. So that's something to consider if you want to take on that challenge. It's quite a different way to tell a story, but it is there for you if you're a storyteller. So if you're going that route, let us know what you think of the tip. You can jump in our Discord or send us an email to studio77@mymatter.com. So that's the tip for this episode. Tazziii, let's check in with our guest.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear what projects you're working on, or anything upcoming that you want to shout out. Inko, do you want to go first?
All right. At the moment, if you go to Amazon, you can see there's a book about Clip Studio Paint, which is, well, of course, this is program, which is you can download on the computer or using that app on the mobile or iPad. That's a digital drawing tool. And then my book, Learn Clip Studio Paint, is out now. So it's really good companion for the any Clip Studio Paint or digital drawing beginners, but also for people who want to brush up their skills as well. So there's so many tips which is useful for manga or illustration creation. So there's a bit of animation creation as well, but majority is illustration and manga. And also the new game, probably the April next year coming, is Promise Mascot Agency. Is an indie game from a company called Kaizen. And then this is hilarious game, which is exiled Yakuza guy have to return so much debt. So he has to join in the mascot agency, which has got the tons of mascots to join in some events. So you are a person who's organizing events, organizing mascots to send to, but so many different mini games attached to it, and then background story of him. Also, you can follow it, and then this is hilarious game. You will laugh at all designs and story. I'm sure you enjoy, and that's already started on Steam. You can book the downloading the game now, and so I hope everyone try out this game and enjoy it. Okay, that's all from me now.
Oh, awesome. We'll make sure we'll add some links to
Thank you.
the show notes. Chie, what about you?
Well, that's the book. I've been created 2 books with an author called Julian Sedgwick, and we've been teaming up and created 2 books. And then our last book was recently nominated for the Carnegie Medal for illustration and for the writing as well. So we're kind of hoping we're going to go a little bit further. And we also kind of thinking of, we already start kind of new project on the same team, me and Julian. So we are on that kind of thing. And then I've been just recently doing quite a lot of talks and workshops for schools and libraries and things like that. So that's what I've been doing. So please, if you find that 100 Tales from Tokyo Ghost Cafe or Tsunami Girl in your local bookshop or online bookstore, please buy them. And then that is actually really good read for adult and for young people. So that's all from me.
Thank you so much for sharing. Again, we'll make sure to add some links in the show
Thank
notes.
you.
Yeah, and thank you for both like coming and making me think wildly different about this film than when we started. But yeah, no, good to get like cultural like background as well to put it into context. And so yeah, if that was helpful for you listeners, if you enjoyed this episode of Story X Story, make sure you subscribe. We have at least one more deep dive for this season, and then we do it all again next year. So yeah, you can go back to previous seasons, listen to all the episodes there, listen to other episodes that Inko and Chie have been on, because I feel there've been quite a few now. So definitely do that. Give us a 5-star rating and review if you are so inclined, because that helps us reach new listeners and fans of story discussion. As we do more of the podcast, we want to broaden the reach and broaden the impact, get different people on. So we're also story creators. We are working on a story. I mentioned it a little bit, Origins Against All Odds. We will have that done by the end of the year. We are redoing our website, doing a completely new website. So bear with us. We'll find a way to sort of link things so people can still pre-order and order the book. But yeah, it might look a bit messy until the new website is up. You can always contact us directly as well. You can jump in our Discord. Our Studio 77 Discord is available. You can also consider becoming a member to support the work that we do at Maya Matter. A lot of that work is within the Do I Look Like a Gamer video game representation campaign. That is a yearly initiative for diversity and inclusion in the video games industry and wider culture. It's actually a separate website, so that's looklikeagamer.com. That one is staying as it is for now at least. So that's still there, so you can see like this year's campaign 40. You can get notified or get directed to the event page for the next event. We've got a couple more left in the year, and then it will have information on getting involved in next year's campaign as well, so definitely bookmark that one too. As for the podcast, we release new episodes on Thursdays, and those include creator interviews, video game discussions, and deep dives into stories across pop culture. You can always give us a shout directly. Our email address is studio77@mymatter.com, and our website with links to subscribe is mymatter.com/storyxstory. So thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe, and remember, you can't make an omelette without burning a few wara wara, apparently. Anyway, take care, everyone.